Okay. So how do you feel you are in terms of realization? Do you feel really clear on that? Because it's really just the distinction between impersonal being and the personal mode.
Mm. Yes, I'm setting with this because I ask myself this question a lot. So I'm
Mm,
just in this moment, I want to be as
mm,
authentic as possible.
mm.
Um, how do I feel? So the distinction between the personal and impersonal, yes, I feel very clear with that.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Because that's the key, because impersonal being really is infinite potential. And then the personal mode is something which we create. It's a sort of construct, and we can invest in that to whatever degree we wish to. And energetically, investing in aspects which are uplifting, love, compassion, unity, then there's no energetic expenditure. But the energetic expenditure is if we invest in the lower frequency experiences, the ones we don't wish to have.
So that's what's been so interesting about this last month is my energy is so alive. So as I was sharing before we started recording this, just that I had the
Mm.
session with Amanda Tweed and it really opened me in a way that um, gave me the pointers that I needed
Yes.
to decline the personal invitations that were
Yeah.
draining my energy. And
Fantastic.
oh, it was outstanding. And my energy, I've been sleeping so well.
Mm.
Well, for years, I have not slept well, years.
Ah. Mm.
And I have been sleeping so well this month. Some of my physical issue, I have physical issues have been healed.
Mm.
Um, I feel like there's little tweaks here and there that I'm still bringing life force into to help with the healing, but
Mm.
I feel very much on such an uplifting path of decline. I did not realize that by saying yes to the invitations that were contracting and painful and negative is also a word for
Mm.
them. They're just negative.
Yes.
Saying yes to the negative stuff was actually plugging me in, as you often say,
Mm.
to the dual realm in a way that was draining me and
Mm.
keeping me from the full fulfillment and joy of
Mm.
this life.
Yes.
I will say, as I was also sharing with you before we were recording, that there was like yesterday, probably started a day and a half ago before our planned meeting. Um, I know I spoke about what happened at nighttime, but during the daytime too, there
Mm.
was like a couple more familiar invitations that felt uh like I was listening in to see I was listening in closer than what I've been training myself to listen into. Like I don't
Yeah.
get that close usually anymore.
Right. Yes.
Ah, oh no.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's well, really, the invitations, they reveal quite a lot, because the more intense they are, really, um, what they're disclosing is the potential of the opposite, because they work on the basis of inversion. So if they're coming in to try to limit you in some way, it's really because there's potential which is so high that the dualistic realm doesn't want you to achieve that. So we get the heavy invitation. So you can use them inspirationally, really. You can say, well, that's a really good sign, actually.
So basically, all of humanity who's suffering right now it's a really good sign for what they're capable of, what we're capable of.
Well, it is actually. You can't say that to everyone, of course, but that's really the key. But specifically when there is realization, or when there's potential for realization,
Mm.
the it puts the dualistic realm on alert, and the dualistic realm then tries to divert our attention from the potential that's available.
I still am so curious why it cares so much. But I guess where am I, if I was to try to answer that myself from
Mm.
being in your community, I would say it's just because it's the movie.
Yes. Yeah, it's well, the two aspects really. The one is that it's a movie, and also within the movie, the dualistic realm doesn't actually have any power of its own. So the only way it can actually become empowered and have any influence is by deceiving the beings into relinquishing energy and fueling the dualistic realm.
By relinquishing the beings. Okay. Can you say that one more time, please, David?
Yeah, so the dualistic realm has no energy of its own.
Yep.
So all the dualistic realm can do really is to deceive the beings who, because all the beings who are in alignment with um, God or the infinite being, they have like an energy bank. They have access to infinite energy, really. And it's only that energy that is available to fuel the dualistic realm because the dualistic realm itself has no energy source.
Okay.
So it's only by, well, it's a scam, really. It's just kind of scamming people from, to invest in the dualistic realm. And it's much of it is based on deception, really, because it's the idea that the dualistic realm is, a very interesting and rewarding place to experience. And things like suffering, fear, jealousy, rage, anger, depression, all of those things are in some way essential parts of the human experience, which they're not. But because, a lot you hear people say things like, well, you have to experience the dark to experience the light, or you have to experience the bad to experience the good. But that isn't the case.
So, David, this is the thing that's so monumental. I've been seeking forever and a year, and the thing for me that I've always been under the impression that because I grew up, I believe in a family, or at least one part of the divorced family was very much interested in not expressing the bad stuff, but we all
Mm,
had bad stuff inside of us and we didn't know what to
mm,
do with it. So it was repression. And
yes.
and it was control also. Like,
Mm,
so it wasn't beautiful. But because of that, when I came of age, I
mhm,
I was like, well, let's express it all. What is all of
mm,
the colors of the rainbow? I want to feel it all. That's where honesty and authenticity is. And then it also happened to be at a time when the therapeutic model was really starting to get more of a mainstream allowance or
yes.
acceptance. And
Yes.
so I took that ride in a
Mm,
big way. And the thing is there was never a moment that I questioned that that wasn't the right way
mm,
because and maybe it was in the sense of maybe I did need after the repression in childhood, I needed to have some kind of a experience with um, these with the parts that I was that were repressed for so
yeah.
long. You think?
Yes, definitely. It's an intermediate step because, as you say, um, there's a sequence in a way, which is firstly, we have to identify with the personal mode of experience, and then we have to identify with the repressed emotions and believe them to be our own. And then from there, it seems as though we need to process them in some way through therapy. So in in one way, therapy can be beneficial. It can assist, in the short term. But the ultimate solution is seeing that sequence that actually, if we don't if we don't activate the personal mode and we just see that we remain as the pristine infinite being, which has no content, and that all the content is optional because we're the sovereign being, we can decide which content we entertain, then we see it's actually a moment to moment experience, because it's almost like a binary system, because there's the infinite impersonal effortless being, which we're all remaining as. That's all we ever are, really. And we can function there for much of the time. And then there's the secondary mode, which is the personal mode, which we activate by personalization, but especially personalized language. But when we realize that sequence, we see that the only way that there can be the idea of having stuff to process is is when we've already adopted the personal mode. But what's really happening, though, is that there are tendencies. So the tendencies are, there can be tendencies within families. So there could be a tendency to not express fully, or there could be a tendency to um, identify with some form of limitation, some form of limiting concept, or accept invitations into various forms of emotional trauma, including repression, which is really that's a form of emotional trauma, really. Uh, but but when we see that we actually remain in our true infinite nature always, then we don't need to take those steps, because the whole of the dualistic realm is dependent on personalization for it to be fueled energetically by the beings who don't realize that that's the sequence. So when we simply remain in our true infinite nature, you see that the experiences we've had, for instance, you may, like with parents, say, maybe the dad has a tendency for accepting invitations into anger, and the mum might have tendencies to accept invitations into fear. And they personalize that by saying, "Oh, I'm angry," or "I'm afraid." But actually, they're only tendencies. And because it's a delivery system, the more we kind of lubricate that system by taking delivery of those specific frequencies, then the more they're going to be delivered. And the more it then appears as though, oh, that is all my anger. I have a lot of repressed anger but it's really that you're going to the anger shop and you're buying it all the time, really, because you haven't got any, because everyone is pristine, really. There is none, but it's just the tendencies they can predominate. And with personalization, it can appear as though we do have that content when no one ever has any content, really. And if we look at it from unity, we can see it much more clearly. So in impersonal being, in this moment, we can just rest as impersonal being. We can notice the forms appearing. So there's sound appearing, the images on the screen, awareness of the body sitting on the seat, or awareness of the objects in the room. And while we're remaining as this infinite field of beingness and awareness, those forms just arise equally and effortlessly. And we're remaining in our true impersonal nature. And because the body mind is just, well, the body mind, the thoughts, the emotions, the sensations, they're just forms arising within this infinite ocean of beingness, along with all else, really. So you could say, so there could be an emotion. So there could be, say, an emotion of anger. And you could just say there is impersonal, effortless awareness of that frequency arising on the ocean of awareness. And then there's awareness of the body mind. So they're two forms appearing on the ocean of infinite awareness. But it's in the personal realm that we put them together. And that's the mistake in a way, because it's only when we put the anger with the body mind and we say, oh, this is me, I'm angry. When really, if we look directly, there's simple effortless awareness of the body mind, and then there's simple effortless awareness of a frequency which could be joy or anger or fear or any of those.
The thing that's been profound for me is how much the fragrance of bliss arises when I look into the nature of my being as infinite
Wonderful.
awareness.
Yes.
And that's been so any doubt that I might have had about this path,
Mm.
it just keeps getting annihilated over and over and over again because as I do that simple neutrality practice of effortless being, the
Mm.
bliss is so, I mean, it's in my chest areas where I usually feel it. So it
Yes.
must be using the feelings at some level, right? I mean, the emotional body or
Yes. Well, it's really that we've been conditioned into um, moving more towards the conceptual realm than remaining as effortless being. But because you're familiar with effortless being and neutrality is really the lowest level of effortless being, then as there's that sense of expansion and the arising of joy, a feeling of all possibilities, then we're actually moving towards the body of bliss rather than towards the conceptual realm, towards the mental body. So it's because you've established the foundation of impersonal, effortless, neutral being, which is the foundation from which you can go either towards bliss or you can go towards the mental realm. And
and
because
go
so
ahead.
that's a wonderful sign that you're very established and able to function from impersonal being, and then intuitively you're directed towards the body of bliss, and that'll become more and more available.
It's almost instantaneous. So when I enter into
Fantastic.
that place, there's no choice. I don't feel like I'm making a sovereign choice to
No,
go there. Yeah, I
right.
just
Yes,
yeah.
it's just natural. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fragrance. I think actually I got that language from Amanda Twee that it's like a it really is that bliss is the
Mm.
fragrance of effortless
Yes.
being. And
Yes.
and the yeah, I can feel it even right now. So it's because I was sharing that it's in my chest area, the feeling of bliss,
Yes.
all the way through to the back of the heart, the front, back. And then it kind of like sometimes I'll work on letting it go into all the cells in my body as if
Mm.
it's feeding them, like feeding it bliss.
Fantastic.
I think, did you say once that the bliss body is where our healing happens, or body of wisdom, or our
Well,
physical?
yeah, well, the body of wisdom is where the mental, emotional, and physical bodies can be reconfigured and healed. But the body of bliss actually turbocharges that process. So they can be healed from the body of wisdom, but accessing the body of bliss is something which isn't so available at the moment. More people are beginning to be able to access the body of bliss, but and it's something which is growing because the more people accessing it, the more it becomes available in the morphogenetic field. So
And
that's
speaking of that morphogenetic field, what, so okay, so we discussed how we would heal our own physical bodies.
mm,
And then what about those around us? Like my husband has continued
mm,
to have both successes with healing his body and also um one might call setbacks or just more. I don't know that that's the right word. For him, I think that's what it feels like.
mm,
But expressions of physical dis-ease in the body. And I've been curious as to what my role as this woman who loves him and lives with him
mm.
can have in his physical healing.
Yes. The secret really for you is well, exactly as you're doing, which is you've established the foundation um, within effortless being. And then there's the intuitive direction towards the body of bliss rather than into the dualistic realm. So what that does when it does it effortlessly is the silence and stability of effortless being firstly finds its way into the mental realm. So the mental realm, which previously could be turbulent and could be fueled by energetic investment in the mental realm, that investment tends to be withdrawn. So the mental realm becomes much more quiet. And then as a result of the mental realm becoming more quiet, the emotional realm also settles. And the emotions actually, you find that the low frequency ones are very noticeable if the invitations do arise to them. So you probably, well, as you say, you've made neutrality the lowest level really that you go to, and we can occasionally sort of fall through, but generally, neutrality is the key because that's ensuring we're not investing in the lower frequency emotions, and so the emotions which are available to you are the higher ones. So they're to do with things like love, compassion, unity consciousness, and 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 then when the mind and emotions become realigned, and so because that's happening for you, then whatever's necessary for the health of your husband will become effortlessly apparent to you, and you'll be able to share it with him.
Yes, which I would love if it also became effortlessly apparent to him.
Yes. Well, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. And because really the the opportunity in a relationship is to actually experience in unity consciousness. So when you're together, there is a way that you can remain in unity consciousness rather than in the subject object mode. So just being together, it's just remaining as the field of beingness and awareness, and then noticing the forms appearing equally and effortlessly. So once you've established that you are this open space of effortless being, and the forms appear, so there's awareness of the light, there's awareness of the body, mind in front of you, there's awareness of the objects in the room. There could be the awareness of some thought or some emotion, and the forms are all arising as waves on that same ocean of awareness. So you then begin to experience your husband as a wave arising on the ocean of unity. So you don't see him as being separate from you. You see, because you're the infinite open space of awareness. So the body mind of Robin is arising as a wave in that infinite unified ocean. And so also is the body mind of Robin's husband.
Mhm.
And when you experience in that way, it actually collapses the dualistic mode, it collapses the subject object mode, and then everything becomes available. So there's the potential for, well, it seems like telepathic communication, but it isn't even telepathic because it's on the level of unity, because there's only one being there.
Uh,
And so the more you become familiar with just resting as the field of unity, then all the solutions can appear to you. And really, in a collective sense, that's the solution for everyone, because the more we disengage from the dualistic realm and rest in unity consciousness, then there is no problematic component within unity.
I agree with this. Yeah, and I've noticed that, so for example, when we're in this during this last month, when we're like at home together for an extended period of time, like days,
Mm,
we start to fall into that unity
mm.
consciousness, and there's a peace and a love between us that's really fluid, and we're both, I
Yeah,
know, very fed by it. And I can feel his energy and vitality grow, my own as well,
yeah,
ours, my
yeah.
own. And and so we're growing and it's so beautiful. And then he'll leave. What I've noticed also in this last month is he'll leave, let's say, for work for a day where he has a lot of familiar characters from life before me and life
Mm.
before our home, and like, you know, just
Yes.
his old life for gosh, since he was, you know, just 19, probably. So,
Yes.
yeah, and he's been through a lot of transformation since then. And
Mm.
so he'll go and be with them. And there's currently a lot of health stresses on people there and health stresses on the business.
Mm.
And he comes back, and like yesterday morning, he came. I saw him. He had come home late that night, so I didn't see him before bed. I saw him in the morning, and I was like, "You look green." I was like, and he was just kind of like very clear to me that he was not grounded. And he even
Mm.
said, felt like he was, uh, what was the word he used? Just kind of shuffling, like, okay, I should go here, I should do this. But it was kind of, and
Yes.
what the intuition I got, or it felt like an intuition, but this is something I want to explore with
Mm.
you, the difference
Mm.
is I got a intuition that was like, that boy needs to go lay on the earth ASAP. Like he grounding, like he needs to
Mm.
just let his body lay on the earth. And we've been doing things during this month also where I'll give him like massage and healing work while he's laying on the
Yes.
earth. And so I've
Mm.
seen the transformations that have come from that and in our relationship as well. So I was working out and I just got, it was an intuition, but it was that. And we have a cold plunge. I don't know if you know what that is. It's very cold water that you get in.
Oh, yes.
You do.
Wim Hof, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so, but it can be so cleansing
Mm.
of whatever's, going on. So I was like,
Yes.
he needs a cold plunge and he needs to lay on the earth. The energy of it, though, David, this is why I don't know if it was an intuition or not, because it was a knowingness of my man is not healthy right now.
Mm.
He's green and ungrounded, and it's clear
Mm.
that something affected him at work.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it is
Yes.
just that I was aware of, right? I
Yes.
don't have any question or any doubt, and I don't think he does either.
Mm.
Okay. So that's established. But then I I'm working out. I'm in my own sort of bliss, feeling good, slept well, everything's going, moving, it's good in the music. And then I'm just like, I had that knowing of he needs to go lay down and he needs to
Mm.
get in the
Mm.
water. And but it felt the quality of it was had a little bit of a powerlessness vibe to it, a little victim-y vibe of like in the sense of or I say that in the sense that there was a little bit of like fighty anger over it, meaning it wasn't 100% just, and I think that may be tapping into past with us
Mm.
where I've wanted him to do certain things for his health or healing, and it's
Yes.
created a resistance.
Yes.
So I may have been tapping into some of that. So even just the
Mm.
thought form of knowing what might be very loving for my husband and
Mm.
very calming. I think there was another part of it where I had a lot I needed to get done that day. And
Mm.
um, I wanted to be in a very productive place. And I, um, I and I guess this would be an invitation, but I mentioned that they were coming up about a day and a half before
Mm.
our call. One of the
Yes.
biggest ones was yesterday where I felt, um, I don't want to have to be responsible for your wellness. And
Mm.
that may sound really unloving, but the truth was, it was just like, I want you to be with your body. I want you to know when
Mm.
you're off balance. I want you to know that you can go lay down
Yes.
on the earth. I want you to take the time for yourself. I want you to surround yourself with people that
Mm.
feed you in the way
Yes.
that is harmonious and feels good
Mm.
to your body, mind, and spirit.
Mm.
So thank you. I think that's all of it. I'm not sure where you
Mm.
might go with it.
Well, it's perfect the way you're handling it because we each everyone is a sovereign being, so we're all we're all free to have the experiences we wish to, and it may be that there is still some delight in the experiences that your husband has with the characters from the past, and to, continue to have that, which is absolutely fine.
Totally.
But really, the, the key for your husband is to see that the degree of investment the in the personal realm is something which is optional. So there may be certain aspects of investment in the personal realm to do with past experience where there can be friction or turbulence. And when guys are together, it can be quite competitive sometimes, and there can be a bit of aggression and that kind of thing. But what will happen is in time, he'll just be able to be selective in the way he handles those experiences. So he has all of the aspects of that experience which are just really light and joyful, but without having any impact from the sort of shared field, because it's like he's with you when he's with you, he's in there's a sort of collective consciousness or a shared consciousness when you two are together, and then there's a shared consciousness when he's with the guys, and they're different fields and they're different frequencies. So when he moves from the one to the other, it's 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 quite noticeable. Excuse me. And but the ability will be there to be able to make that transition quite smoothly. But in simple terms, it's really regulating the degree of investment in the personal realm. The There's much more, as you've noticed, really, there's much more freedom and more sovereignty available than people realize. People tend to adopt certain behaviors because that's the sort of consensus reality. But then when you realize that we can live in a more selective way, so we can enjoy the aspect of the relationship, with friends and other guys who, they're on their own path really, and that's fine. But we can handle it in a way where it doesn't impact on us personally, or the aspects which we don't wish to experience don't impact on us, but the ones which are really nice, then they're still available. And so it's just that little bit of it's just a little bit of tuning really in the way he's handling the relationships, and to realize that he can continue. I moved back to my hometown a few years ago, and there are quite a few people living here that I knew when I was, primary school or in my teens, and the relationship I have with them is very similar to the way it was then, because there isn't really, the some of them have just led quite simple lives, really. They've married, had children, but they're still interested in, say, motorbikes or something. It's like the things we were interested in when we were 12 or 14. So you can't really talk about spiritual realization, but you can talk about motorbikes. And it's just really having the flexibility and just enjoying things on their own level, really, but knowing that it doesn't really impact, that you can just being with people and having that sense of friendship and the enjoyment and the innocence of it all really is just great fun.
Which he
Um,
does have. He definitely has that with many of those characters, and I love
yes,
that for him.
yeah,
I just am curious about the part of me that like it felt like it was an intuition mixed with an invitation, the energy I had around it, because there was a forcefulness,
yes.
right? Like I didn't want to have to deal. I wasn't completely neutral with the fact that
Mm.
he was ungrounded and green. And so I didn't want to deal with it. Like I had other
No,
plans for my day, so I
yes,
wasn't totally flexible.
yes,
And I wasn't necessarily choosing love in that moment, right? I mean, I think if I was to, in a way I was, but I also was,
yes,
or maybe I was, and that's where it gets questionable to me because there's love to my company. There's love that I wanted to show up for, that I
Yes.
committed to. There's
Yes.
love for my husband and wanting to show up for and am
Mm.
committed to. And it was
Mm.
like I had made a plan, and then there was this other thing, and then I had some sort of invitation energy around, but I don't want to have to fix you, which is a
Ah,
separation. Yeah.
well, the intuition was actually very clear. So the intuition you had was very well, it was valid and it was clear. But sometimes, even when you detect something, we don't need to exercise the intuition because it may not be received on the right level. So that's the sort of selective aspect, because I'm sure your husband would recover in his own way. And it's just having that simple approach, really, where it's the priorities you have are completely valid, and you're functioning from sovereignty, and your husband's having his own experience, and you can detect a shortcut sometimes where you say, well, just by becoming a bit more grounded, you can neutralize these influences much more quickly. But because there's possibly still the residue of those influences from being in that group, in the sort of collective consciousness of that, that's where the resistance shows up, because it probably isn't directly from your husband, but it's coming from that sort of consciousness of the group in a way that he's tapped into.
Yes.
And
Beautiful.
it really, that's the point at which just to kind of relinquish the need to fix anything, because there are times when you're together and it's very easy and he's open and you just detect that. And then there are other times when he's still in the mode of being with the boys, and the receptivity isn't there so much then. So you just have to let them have that experience.
Oh, that's such gorgeous advice or guidance. I really, really resonate with that. And that, I guess that's it's like intuition on top of intuition, because the first intuition is, oh, grounding would be good for you. Second intuition, now's not the time to tell you about that.
That's very simply put, and that's exactly it. Yeah, that's perfect, Robin. And because it's effortless too, isn't it? Like, it's the effortlessness which is the key, because it's then effortless for you and it's also effortless for your husband, because he can come down and become grounded in his own good time. But that process doesn't affect your activity. So it's simplest for both of you, really.
I love that. So I would continue in those moments. I have the double intuition, and then my response would be, okay, I'm just going to continue on my path then. There's not even
Yes.
receptivity for him to stop with me right now and ground. So, and I have a plan for my day where I'm going to be putting
Yes.
my life force. So, I just declined that invitation of needing to do anything any further. I've moved forward with
Neutrality.
with neutrality. Neutrality. I move forward with neutrality. I move forward with neutrality. Who would have ever guessed that neutrality would feel this good? I remember when I was first on the major part of my seeking path, meaning I was 20 years old and I was in Nepal living there. And it was all about enlightenment,
Mm,
I wanted to
mm,
find enlightenment and experience it. And that's all that mattered to me. And I
mm,
was very serious about it. And also, it was the joy of a hero's journey, the beginning of an
mm.
adventure. And
Yeah.
and I remember studying with a Tibetan lama, because in Nepal, it's right on the border. I was living in Bodhana, which is right on the border of Tibet and Nepal. And
Mm,
I was studying with the Tibetan lama, and I remember, I mean, not in any deep way, but he was one of the many characters that I learned from during that time period. And I remember him talking about, in his own language, neutrality as being the way,
mm,
and that and it was so um, counter to what I was exploring as a young woman at that time.
Mm.
I was in college, um, and it was a my experiences were, goddess culture and feeling the femininity and the sensuality of the body. And like, I thought that was the way to enlightenment. I still think that's all very valuable, and it's part of the
Yes.
feminine uprising in a way that is very important for our planet. I think
Yes.
there's a lot of bliss and pleasure in that path that is very much
Yes.
connected to ultimately the path of love and
Yes.
nourishment and kindness and all of that we could use an infusion of. So I still very much appreciate it. However, the way that I was experiencing that was not about neutrality. The
Mm.
way I experienced the goddess path, as I called it, was
Yes.
much more about, again, the expression of the full rainbow, and like everything is divine and every emotion is worthy of our love, which
Mm.
yeah. So when the Tibetan Lama said neutrality is the way, I was like, did
Yes. Right.
not resonate.
No, not at that age, because it's more about excitement at that age, isn't it, really, rather than
Well,
neutrality?
so, but this is so great. Okay, because I do love what you said earlier in this conversation. Was coming up again around that there's not that there are stages of development
Mm.
where now it feels so like I'm receptive to what you offer us
Mm.
now, but then completely not. But I love that you're saying that that's actually an important part of the development and growth.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Mm.
Is that just because it's part of the game, why it's an important part, like it's part of the movie, and or is it literally part of our biology and psyche and spiritual transformation, like we need to go through that?
Well, it's probably all of those things, but maybe the most important thing is that without those experiences, you couldn't really relate authentically to others because you need that experience and you need that step along the way to know actually how to deal with those things. Because if someone of that age spoke to you now, you could offer some, very good guidance, which you couldn't if you hadn't been through those experiences.
Oh my goodness, that is so true. I so I have I mean, that's one of the things I'm interested in is learning more. I've in different ways taught lots of people different things. So for a while I was
Mm.
teaching mindfulness regularly, and then I've worked in corporations teaching like resilience through
Mm.
a kind of mindfulness, but also this hands-on art experience that my company, a product that we create.
Mm.
And so I have been really interested in how to bring some of these concepts into specifically the corporate arena, just because I'm there a little bit, but I'm not in it, right? I don't I get to come in with the benefit of being an outsider, but yet somebody that they
Yes.
want to learn something
Yes.
from that's going to create more peace and ease and productivity in their life.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I would love to bring this. And I've always my whole life walked the fine line of the part of me that's counterculture and the part of me that seeks to that feels like I am capable of speaking other languages if needed.
Mm. Yes.
And it could be, I work in prisons also. I mean, I love being able
Mm.
to, it excites this being that is
Mm.
Robin to be able to find a message that's as universal as I feel this work we're doing right now is
Yes.
and be able to bring it to, it's like, oh, well, we're all humans who have experienced suffering. And or all humans who would like to experience less suffering.
Mm.
Okay, so, and that's always been sort of the guidepost for my experience as a human being wanting less suffering, and also what I have all my companies or teaching or talks, even though they've always been very different,
Mm,
I've
mm,
always wanted, that's always been the guiding light. To the best of my ability, with the information I have available at any moment, is how can there be an alleviation of suffering? And so
mm,
because doing this process of separating the personal from the impersonal has been so profoundly suffering eliminating for me,
mm.
I'm like, well, we gotta
Yes.
bring it. We
And well, there is an opportunity to be able to work in a different way, where it's there's more flow involved. And the interesting thing is that when you begin to function from impersonal being and from neutrality rather than to be in the dualistic realm, it has a very powerful influence and impact on the people around you because they then see that it's much more efficient. Functioning from an impersonal being, you could say, is to do less and accomplish more. Whereas the dualistic realm is about hard work, achieving things in time, utilizing the mind, competing, and all of the things which require a huge amount of effort. But all of that is overlooking the great resource we have, which is that we are the infinite being, and we're having this experience, which is where we're remembering that we have this effortless, magical resource which is available to us, which will guide us and take care of us, but we've overlooked it completely because it's like the mind's like a candle, and the infinite being is like the sun, but the candle is in front of the sun, and everyone's looking at the candle instead of noticing the sun.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow, what great really two examples, huh, of bringing this into a world that might usually be run by duality.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, it could, there are lots of ways where it can be done without it even being in a spiritual context, because, well, two aspects of that. So the one is if you take any kind of creativity, so if people are, well, they could be musicians or artists or writers, or they could be in the sports world, for instance. And most people don't realize that everything comes from our infinite nature because they're so conditioned into personalization that they think it's all they sort of take authorship personally. So if you have someone who's a great composer, they feel as though it's coming from them personally sometimes. I mean, a lot of people do realize, they say, well, it's being in the flow or being in the zone.
right.
And people, I remember Van Morrison, he was saying, well, I didn't write any of these songs, they just came through me. And so there's that aspect. So the one, if you were going to apply it in a corporate sense or to do with sport, it's really enabling people to see that there are these different modes. And the coaches are a really good model because when you can demonstrate that effortless being is or the body of wisdom, um, or impersonal being you could use, which has no sort of spiritual connotations, um, compared to the personal mode, then you can demonstrate that everything is actually coming from our infinite impersonal nature. So if you take, say you take football, for instance, the guys playing football, they personalize it and they think, oh, I'm a great footballer. And when they're in the flow, when they're aligned, so people have the ability to function in a particular area. So it could be in sport or music or art or something. And it's really that there's a portal open to their infinite nature in that particular subject. Um, but where there's personalization, they can very easily be drawn back into the personal realm. And you can see it in sport quite a lot, where if you have a football team, they can begin playing and they're all playing from effortless being and they're really confident and it's the flow is just really beautiful to watch. But then if the other side scores or if there's a mistake or something, they can be catapulted back into the mental realm.
Yeah.
And so the limitations of the mental realm start to come in
Yeah.
and the confidence of the whole team collapses.
Yeah.
But the reason for that is they don't realize there are these two modes. But when the more we become familiar with effortless being and neutrality, then there would be the ability to decline the invitations into personalization and limitation, because it's really that the dualistic realm starts to deliver thoughts like, oh, you've never really been any good. I don't know how you've progressed to this level, really, because you've got no skill. And because you can see even the most highly paid and skilled footballers, their confidence can just really collapse and they're useless.
Yeah.
But it's because the mind has taken over, and not only has the mind taken over, but the energy which was previously being directed into the game and the flow, of functioning from the zone, is actually well, it's activating the mental realm, and it's fueling the dualistic realm. So the energy is being, well, it's become counterproductive because it's like it's activating the enemy in a way, which is the invitations are turbocharged, and the delivery of those is, is just really quite extreme. So the contrast between the one and the other is huge, really. But it's because nobody told them, well, actually, there are these two different modes of experience which are available. So that's something which, if you were speaking to people in sport, then that's something that could be introduced. But in the corporate world, um, the the ability to function from impersonal being is something which it takes a little while to be able to demonstrate that, because all of the education system and the corporate world in general is designed to keep people in personalization, because all of that really is part of the energy system. Because even the age we live in, work is actually something which is part of the dualistic realm, because when everyone is in unity consciousness and in full alignment with their infinite nature, there is no work. There is just well, there's enjoyment of whatever you wish to do, but
Yeah.
it isn't work. It's inspiration, and it's a field of infinite possibilities, really.
Totally. So when we're making the distinction between the personal and the impersonal, I'm imagining a corporate setting, the personal is easy to talk about because we all know it really well, better than we could, probably.
Yes, yeah,
And then the impersonal is a little, what's interesting about it is like because it immediately for us, our grounding and our understanding of this is kind of okay, the impersonal being, or at least my grounding, I'll speak for myself, is this infinite, it's infinite potential, it's infinite awareness, it's
mm,
awareness being aware of itself. It's the great ocean of which the personal waves rise upon and the frequencies rise
yeah,
upon it. It's these are just like some of the ways that I would explain. I mean, it's God,
yeah,
it's like, it's spirit. Maybe spirit is how I experience it more directly. Um, but it is all of that. It is this,
yes,
and so then, making it, as you said, non-spiritual, to
mm.
talk, when I say it, the infinite being non-spiritual, was there anything in what I said or anything else you would say that you feel would be a useful terminology for?
Well, I like to refer to it as a field of infinite potential, which is what it really,
Yes, but
because
yeah, please.
anything is really possible. What you see from the way we've been conditioned, and this is really all part of the play, is we're conditioned into limitation, really, for the joy of waking up to realize that life is a field of infinite possibilities in reality. And we experience the limitation for the joy of waking up to our infinite nature. But the personal realm is really like well the dualistic realm is like a computer game. So the body mind is almost like a character within that game. But the impersonal being is like the player of the game.
Mm.
And the degree to which we invest our energy in the character um, is it affects the sort of energetic potential of what's going on. So we can have that experience most effectively if we're not over investing in identification with the character. And so so impersonal being is the way you describe it. It is a field of infinite potential, and everything is arising within that. But there's that side of it, which is, I think, initially, because it's something which you could develop. So initially, when you meet guys in a corporate sense, the two aspects that I would focus on really would be firstly the the seeing that functioning from the zone and using terms that they're familiar with is is something which can be consciously utilized and consciously activated, because functioning from the zone is actually always available, and you can explain how to achieve that,
Mm.
uh, and how the limitations of the personal realm are the things which compromise the full potential of remaining in alignment with the zone. So it's almost like it's like teaching people how to surf the waves of the infinite being
Mm.
impersonally,
Mm.
uh, and and to be able to continue surfing. The other aspect, though, is in the declining of the invitations, because many people have seen the film The Matrix, but the key thing to point out is that the mind is both a transmitter and a receiver. So it's actually receiving content. That there is a dualistic server, as in the Matrix, which is actually delivering the invitation. So it's like we're involved in this energy game, which most people have no knowledge of, because the thoughts and emotions are personalized. They believe them to be their own, when really all along they're only being delivered as invitations. But if we take delivery of them and personalize them, then we're energizing them and we have those experiences. But when you realize, as you have, that they can be declined, then the energy which previously was compromising your experience and keeping you in limitation and emotional turbulence, that energy is reclaimed and it becomes available in terms of the experiences you wish to have.
It's incredible. Yeah, I'm thinking about the invitations for them. I'm trying to, let's see, when you said that, I was experiencing so much bliss that I didn't. But then it's like, yeah, that's so good. And of course, I love the part about surfing, surfing the waves and of infinite being. And yeah, but I do believe that the invitation component, I can't talk about the dual server thing with them.
That would be difficult to feel.
Yeah.
Well,
I,
yeah, the way to the way to discuss it really is I use some analogies. So I say that the way the invitations work, so you don't really need to go into that sort of dualistic aspect, but um, what I do sometimes is describe the way the mind works. It's very similar to the way algorithms work on the computer. So if there are certain invitations, so if someone is accepting lots of invitations into, say, fear, um, the there's a frequency being established so that more of that content is delivered, and it works on the same basis as the algorithms on a computer. So the
yes.
way Amazon or YouTube, they're actually profiling us all the time. So they're watching, they're seeing the content that we're consuming. They see the duration, they see the topics, the subjects we're watching, and we're being profiled. And that's really how the mind works, because if we if we're taking delivery of certain content in the mind, so whether it's, it could be fear or anxiety or depression or any of those things, um, the the algorithms are sort of determining that, and then it creates more. It's a sort of frequency basis on which they're delivered.
Right. Which there's probably some scientist somewhere I would say I would connect that to neural pathways. You know how they say you can
Yes,
redo a neural pathway in 21 days with a new habit. So
yes,
we just would say you you're
yes. You could say that. Yes, they're like, well, the neural pathways, they're like grooves in a way. So if there's a, a neural pathway which is to do with anxiety, then that could be quite a deep groove, and it's something that we've been on that pathway for quite a long time, or too much time, and it's created this tendency to remain in that frequency. So you could explain it in that way.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And um I will say that I know not everyone's like me, but I just want to put it out there that it actually has been really great for this body mind that is Robin to see the invitations as something outside of myself, like not in my
Yeah.
brain.
Yes.
That actually has been super valuable.
Yes. Well, that's the liberation, really, because most human beings are entertaining all that content, all the mental and emotional content, believing it to be their own. And they're battling with it, and they're trying to overcome it and suppress it and repress it and do all sorts of things. Um, but
If
actually, when you realize it isn't yours in the first place, it's quite liberating because you realize actually there isn't anything you need to do with it. It's like taking in your neighbor's dirty washing and, spending all the time washing it.
I know, I know. I mean, but this is the liberation, and it's also what makes your teachings so novel because it's just not as and I do value you say a lot too. I know a lot of these interviews I valuing their intuition for guiding them where
Mm,
they are to where they because it's not the norm right now. This is not the normal thing that regular folks are talking about.
mm,
And so I think like I am so grateful that it was an algorithm that brought me to you.
mm.
Actually, I
Quite
had been
interesting, yes.
yeah, I had been tuning in. And actually, the first because I've been really I tuned into the non-dual world first, right?
Mm,
That was the gate, the gateless
yes.
gate.
Mm,
I tuned into that. Yes. And and then I had been, I had my Rupert Spira, my Adyashanti, my however whatever teachers, all the ones I was listening to, and at some point, uh, is it Colette Whitman? Is that
yes.
yes,
Les Whiteman, yes.
Whiteman?
Yes.
Yeah, her one of her videos came up, and this is a trip, David, because wow, okay. One of her videos came up, and she was talking about her experience of being awakened.
Mm,
And I even read in I was like, who's this? Like,
mm,
she's awakened. Like, I really had that vibe of because I'd been on the path for so
mm.
long. Like I said, I was at 20 and all I cared about was enlightenment,
Yes.
right? So I've been around that block.
Sure. Yes.
I was like, what? She's awakened? Like, who is this?
Mm,
Like I had a little bit of that, but also really curious.
mm,
And I listened to what she said and then I looked at her description of, I experienced my awakening with David Bingham was like in the thing and I'm like, well, who's that? So then I went and checked you out and I think I will listen to some conscious TV interviews first, and they were awesome. And I think what I felt, well, with Colette as well, but I
Mm.
just was still, what I felt with you, just to stay on that track, was a um like such a deep inner knowing and authenticity, such a confidence and a doubtless confidence in your experience without any sort of arrogance. And that was unique. And so my intuition was like ding ding ding, and yeah, so I do feel like I do I I am so grateful. I am so grateful. I feel so hmm, I feel grateful that this body mind probably has more life to live, and
Mm.
that I get to live it on this path,
Mm. Wonderful.
wellness, yeah,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
sharing and growing, and uh it feels so good not to have that heavy weight. It felt heavy is what it did. That
Yes,
suffering that I've been carrying around, it felt like
yes,
this like big cloak around me and behind me, kind of like a shell. And
yes.
it and and yet people in my life experienced me as light, and whatever, but I didn't know what was wrong, because I would have so many hours of despair in my life,
Mhm.
so many hours of being trapped in the pain body.
Mm.
And really, I mean, I was given it my A game to be free. I wasn't worth, I mean, maybe there was, I wasn't never at a place of truly giving up. No, I mean, I'm too much of a like fighter
Yeah.
not to give up, but I was like, this is hard.
Until you discover effortless being.
Yeah, right. That's the gateless gate.
It's your intuition that's guided you so well, though, Robin, because just the way you were mentioning that there was like a light which went on when you saw Colette, because in some ways it was that sense. I remember that same feeling. The first person I knew who realized their true nature, um, it makes you realize it's possible. And there must have been some sense of that. You realize, well, if Colette can realize the true nature, so can I, which gives you that sense of certainty and determination.
Yes,
And then your intuition guided you from there.
yes,
And so, but yeah, it's an amazing sequence, really.
yes, yes. And no, I'm really glad you brought it back to that, because the fact now that there's a community around you who are sharing, we're all sharing our
Yeah,
awakening.
I love that. Just the way so many people, and it's in so many different ways. Because Colette and Amanda have worked together. They've done different things together. I think they're mainly doing their own now because with each of us, we're all the sovereign being, and it's having that sense of allowing whatever it is to just come through you, and you'll find that because it's a continual refinement, but the things that have come to you recently and they've come effortlessly, um, they're things which they'll be available well on your own terms really, and you'll find ways to be able to utilize them, and then you'll take them onto a new level. And that's the thing that I love, because that's what everyone's doing, and that it is like a community where everyone is doing their own thing really, but it's all based on the clarity of realization and being able to share that. But it's in different areas. Some people are doing it in health, others are to do it, with purely to do with realization. Others, yeah, it is to do with some people it's business and success and that kind of thing as well, because um, there is such a huge range really, because effortless being is the foundation, and from there, then anything, because it's a field of infinite possibilities.
Yeah. And as you speaking, I was thinking of the intuition that guided me here was so subtle.
Mm,
I did Colette's video was definitely stood out amongst all the rest in the way that
mm,
she spoke about her realization.
yes.
But there was a subtlety. There's been a subtlety, as you said, it's happened very effortlessly. One of the things that want does I would like to have a stronger connection to is feeling intuition with my decisions. So, like, for example, I got invited to do this thing in September, and I've been trying to feel my intuition's response, and
Mm.
I'm having a hard time. Is there any
Ah,
guidance you would give to being able to access it?
The the intuition tends to be fairly clear. It's just that sometimes there's some clarity required in terms of the direction you're taking, because um, what I feel you'll find is that it may be that in recent years you've done things which aren't totally in alignment with your highest purpose. There's the highest purpose you have really is in sharing realization and bringing unity consciousness into this world. That's probably your highest purpose, as it
Yes,
is.
my body just said yes, David.
And so if there is reservation, it isn't really because your intuition isn't working. It's because maybe the decision to accept an invitation to do something which isn't totally in alignment with your higher purpose is something which previously you would have done, but your intuition is more finely tuned and your purpose is clearer. So what tends to happen is you can detect the things which are of a higher purpose, invitations to speak with people or to do certain things. But the guidance becomes really clear, and that's really the thing to follow. It's kind of giving yourself permission to trust your own inner knowing completely, and also knowing your highest purpose, and knowing that your highest purpose is really the foundation of everything. So sometimes there can be there can be I think some people can be distracted into more worldly success, so they would compromise their higher purpose for worldly success. But what's available ultimately is the highest worldly success is really based on your highest purpose. And when you see it in that order, so you're totally authentic in terms of your highest purpose, and then the worldly aspect is something which infinite intelligence will take care of for you. So you don't need to be making decisions on those themes. It's really just the consistency of your highest purpose.
Yes. And then how would I know if my highest purpose is going to get expressed in this September thing or not?
Well, it depends on the theme of the event, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, um,
But it's also to do with it's having that sense that you can find a context in any situation really
that.
to be able to bring the highest purpose through into that situation. And that's really that's in that situation, I would say that's the solution really. It's finding the context where you can bring your highest purpose through into that event, so it's of maximum benefit to everyone who's there.
I mean, so obviously that's I mean, I get that. I get that wherever this body mind is, it's to tune into how to be of service. It's just a matter of like, do I go through the effort this of this thing? It's not. that the event is about like mermaids and massage and mindfulness and that kind of thing. It's
Yes.
more a visit of my past as opposed,
Yes.
there's even white peacocks on the land, which was a major medicine for me back in the
Yes.
day. So it's more of an invitation into, they want me to do like massage and mindfulness and things on there, which has just not been a
Yes.
part that I was a massage therapist in my early
Yes.
life, and
Yes.
now, yeah, now I have this company and I've been talking about a desire to speak this in a more mainstream way. And
Mm.
um, I guess trying to figure the distinction of, if I'm not at the mermaid event, yes, we do wear tails and go under the water and take pictures of each other. Okay. If we're not at the mermaid event, then I am in a place of developing more mainstream content that is absolutely going to be in alignment with this. If I'm at the mermaid event, I am not as I'm more open to talking about the playful infinite being and
Yes.
and so maybe neural pathways versus playful infinite being, impact and money versus a really long drive,
Mm.
and playfulness and freedom, but also like I'm not sure that's the direction I'm going, or if it's just an
Mm.
invitation from the past. Like, do you see? So both,
Yes.
both, yeah, okay.
Well, really, the opportunity to introduce the concept of unity consciousness is something which you could utilize in the mermaid event, because it's, in a way, it's the perfect situation, because you can talk about the infinite ocean of awareness and the infinite ocean of beingness, and then you can actually describe unity consciousness, where the integration of the mermaid into the ocean is something which is already fully available, and that's how there's maximum satisfaction, in the experiences where there is the possibility of unity within the experience. And so in that way, it would be quite a good event. I'm sure you could put something together in that way.
Yes, and then like massage, which again, I loved being a massage therapist. I mean,
Yes.
it was even a massage, I did so many kinds. I was living in Las Vegas and I gave massages in the high-end poker room in Caesar Palace with
Yes.
dreadlocks at like 24. I mean, we've been around the block. And and so,
That's great.
but I haven't, again, I did get focused on worldly success
Mm.
at a certain point. Now, with that said, like my company is founded in wellness still, and
Yes.
it's the main product I was mentioning. We use a product in our trainings, either it's with corporate or whoever it is we're working with. Are you familiar with kintsugi? It's a Japanese art form from the 15th century.
No, I'm not actually. That sounds interesting.
Kintsugi translates to golden joinery, and it's
Mhm.
essentially, instead of discarding pottery that breaks, an
Mhm.
artisan would glue the pieces together with gold. And you've
Oh,
probably seen images of the bowl. Have you seen an
yes.
image of the bowl where you've got the gold lines?
Yes.
So
Yes.
our product is, we have created kits, kintsugi kits, for different special occasions or rites of passage. So the idea is you're breaking away from the old and bringing in the gold of the new into
Yes.
whatever the thing is, if it's
Yes.
a divorce or a new marriage or a death or whatever the life experience, a healing after an illness, whatever it happens to be.
Yes. Yes.
So in the corporate arena, they actually do the kits. Like they'll get
Mm.
together and depending on what size of group it is, they'll break their bowl and they'll glue it together with gold. And then we use it as a metaphor for whatever it is we're working with. Resilience is usually the theme. But
Yes.
I was just thinking in terms of um, like bringing the uh, the self-realization piece and kintsugi.
Bringing them together.
Yes.
Mm.
Well, does anything spark in your head as far as a metaphor? Is that we talk about the ocean metaphor with mermaids.
Yes.
I could not
Yes.
agree more, and that's an awesome opportunity to play in that. if we're not, so we know ocean, what about kintsugi, the brokenness, becoming more beautiful before the bowl was broken, becoming more unique, more ornate,
Mm.
more resilient? How would you
Well,
characterize?
that really is that's really the process of the human experience. It's really like the prodigal son in a way, which is where we all begin um, as the complete, pristine, infinite being, and then it gets smashed in the fragmentary nature of the human experience, where it seems as though life is just really diverse and fragmentary, and there's no seeing of the unity. And then the rebuilding back to unity, which is where we see that actually, even though you're seeing all the pieces, that you can draw it back together because the unity of the piece was never actually lost because all the pieces are still there. And that's true of our experience, really, because the infinite being never actually went away. It's just that the fragmentary aspect of the dualistic realm is overlaid on unity to make it seem as though it's become fragmentary when it never did really.
Oh, that's so gorgeous. So the gold represents what's always been, like our golden nature.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
That's really, really beautiful.
Gold is the representation of the divinity of unity consciousness.
Mm, mm.
It's
Yeah.
quite interesting the way you can use because if there's quite strong identification with form, using some of those methods can be very valuable actually,
Mm.
because people can relate to form rather than the formless in many cases. So it's
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So they're breaking, the breaking, if I hear in the way you're interpreting it right now, it's like the breaking is um what life does to us or the world does to us,
yeah,
right? The
what it
world break
yes, yeah,
fragments us.
yes,
And then, or even we could even say like the mental realm, the
mm,
conceptual realm
yes,
fragments us.
mm,
And then what we realize though, by like maybe just having awareness of it is, oh, but we're still here. We're in a million pieces, but something's still capable of picking the pieces back up and gluing
yes.
them together and creating something more beautiful. What is the thing that's doing that? That's our sovereign being.
It is exactly, yes, yeah.
That's our sovereign being, and that's our infinite potential.
Mm,
And I will say that working in the corporate arena in the past, I've had a lot of anxiety at times going in there
mhm,
because there's a lot of perfectionism and it sometimes will
yes,
spark some of my perfectionism.
mm,
And I don't know what it would be like now. I might have a
mm,
totally different experience with it.
yes,
But I do want to be clear. I want to make sure that I'm not choosing it because it, I mean, I feel like I'm choosing it for two reasons. One is I like the challenge,
mm,
right? I'm like,
yes.
oh, and I also have always been, even though it's harder than
Mm.
talking with the bunch of mermaids about the ocean. There's 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 also there's a I my intuition seems to feel that it's really important to be able to, I've always felt this, not just about this work, but spirituality in general. I've always felt like it's somehow really important to have language that doesn't turn people off from it because they
Yes,
don't agree
exactly.
with it.
Yeah.
And so in some cases, that means I need to God it up. But in most cases, it means I need to get really practical. And so I agree, having the form of the kintsugi thing, like there's a hands-on experience, but you and I are still talking about, you know, the conceptual. Well, I think conceptual realm breaking us is a valuable thing for any of us to get.
Mm.
I think we can all think about like even in high school or junior high or something like getting put in a box and not knowing how to, I think we all have
Well,
a,
every concept is a limitation. So we're looking for the truth, but all we find is these limitations in the conceptual realm. In the same way as, you see the broken pot and you just see these pieces and they're all fragmentary and you just see them as a limitation, but you don't see the potential of the totality, even though it's right there before you.
what this reminds me of? I think you said the what is it, the prodigal son.
Mm.
But what this reminds me of is the prodigal son. Just it reminds me of something you said in an interview. I think it was with Rami.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, or most recent one that you released a couple days ago.
Yes.
And you were talking about astrology
Mm.
and you said that there's the malefic and the ben benefic
Benefic. Yeah. Yeah.
benefic um astrological chart.
Yes.
And the malefic to me feels a bit like kintsugi in the
Mhm.
sense that the world breaks us, it's not bad. It's
Yes.
actually an invitation to find our gold.
Yes. Fantastic. That's a great context. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so then I guess just rewinding though, if it, I want to, although, so I can feel, I was starting to talk about, I can feel a desire towards wanting to learn common language for this incredible suffering annihilation path of self-realization. That's cool. I value that. That feels in alignment with my divine path. Um, I'm in more flow in nature in water with white peacocks and mermaids
Yes.
and ocean language than having to deal with people's broken pieces and insurance
Yeah.
documents.
Sensible.
But okay, so would you really choose the flow choice over that? Because there is something like, but the challenge, like I could feel that energy in me, but it's also uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, well, it, it it's really early days for you in one sense because everything's integrating and there are many different threads coming together. So it's treating it all as an adventure. Generally, um, if things are uncomfortable, that's really intuition guiding you, or it's like a boundary, really.
Oh,
So it's saying, are you sure you wish to go there? Because it isn't actually necessary. But you'll find that there will be some unique things which come to you, but it's being alert to the things which are coming effortlessly and just seeing the way they're coming, um, because it's a bit like putting something together. Like all of the components are there for you already, and it's knowing that everything you have, all the experiences you've had through your life, um, everything is completely perfect in the sequence, in the experiences, in the events. Um, and so it's really just being alert to the way they're kind of put together because it's having that sense that there is already perfection in everything. And it's just that the mind can't see the perfection, but the infinite being can. And the infinite being will put it all together the way you put the pots back together. But it's knowing that the mind doesn't need to know how to do that because the infinite intelligence will do that. And it just guides you in the most amazing way. But it is really just on the secret really is for it to be as light and joyful and delightful and loving as possible. And that's really the basis of it because that's the sequence for David Bingham, really, from realization through the conscious TV interviews and the conversations from there, and then speaking with Rhonda, which had quite a kind of accelerating effect. And then the things recently, like the YouTube channel, which is that's accelerated things hugely. And as you say, there's a community growing from there. People are, and it's a community of realized beings. It isn't a community of seekers, which is very unique, really.
yeah, I don't know any other.
Mm. and it's constantly growing and it's evolving in different ways. So more people are realizing their true nature from watching the recordings now than from having conversations.
So I was even thinking just now, as you said that, there is a limitation a little bit in needing to communicate my experience of this in a mainstream way, right? Isn't that a little bit of a limitation there?
No, that's your intuition, actually.
Okay.
The invitation is the aspect that's saying that it's a limitation.
Well, okay, so it was funny because as I was saying it, I could feel a part of me go like, no, but it'll be really fun to do it, Robin. Like it'll be really fun to do that. You're gonna really enjoy it.
Well, exactly. It's stepping into your power really, because you're the infinite being and you have the power. You have the power to transform the consciousness of the planet single-handedly.
You sound
And
like, yeah, go ahead.
and so when you just know it, it's really just being available, because the infinite being is completely outrageous as well as being infinitely intelligent. So any limitation to do with believing your potential to be limited in any way whatsoever actually doesn't apply.
Sorry,
So
but
it's removing all of those boundaries really, and just having the sense that anything can happen,
okay.
and seeing how that, seeing how that will emerge.
And right now, though, when I'm making 3D decisions about things like events and stuff, or where I'm going to put my energy into developing things, um, because so the corporate thing came to me. I didn't like Google contacted me out of the blue and wanted us to do a training. Gilead contacted us, wanted us to do a training, like huge companies. Like
Yes.
I was doing no marketing. I just had a thing on my
Massive.
website but that was a couple of years ago. And since then, I had a big wedding and attention got refocused on this is my priority is being free,
Yes.
and the relationship has been in the place to do it.
Yes.
Like that's where the invitations came and the
Yes.
strongest. And so that's been awesome to be where we are now because of this work. And now I'm just starting to feel it's almost like a blank canvas. And I can feel, okay, where do you want to put your creative life force? And I guess when I look back at when I did some of the larger corporate things in person and even online, like there was still I was still carrying a lot of anxiety. And I think if I heard you correctly, if I had that experience, you were saying that can sometimes be like a blockade saying, no, don't go that way.
Well, in that sense, anxiety usually, um, even though it's an invitation, it's usually to do with limitation rather than to do with expansion. So um, I wouldn't take much heed of that, because
Yeah.
I would take that. I'd interpret anxiety as something which is the dualistic realm has said, well, hang on, we need to watch out here because Robin's on the scene now. She has infinite potential. How can we conceal that from her? I know what we'll do. We'll make her feel anxious, and to deliver a bit of doubt so that she doesn't realize what her true potential is. So that's what I feel is going on, really.
Feel like it was invitations like that. It did.
Mm.
It absolutely was. And now I have a different kind of clarity and confidence of how I can really help.
Yes,
I didn't
yes,
know how I could really help. It wasn't completely embodied.
yeah.
And so I think that would be different. So now as far as like this September thing, it's more of a like if I move towards the path of being free of talking about infinite potential and the big ocean of awareness, and I'm able to be completely unguarded. I don't
Mm.
I don't do neural pathways, but I'm just unguarded with this has been my experience. That
Yes,
there's a freedom in that I think infinite being probably loves, um,
yes,
and like a joyful ease, and
yeah.
it's less of an opportunity for invitations to come in for me. Um, that's though why I'm wondering, is that, would you hear that information from me and be like, go that direction because you're free to speak, or go the
Yeah,
direction?
my feeling is that the most magical aspect has been your own experience, the sequence of events in your own experience, and the way at the beginning of the conversation, the way you were describing um, the way things have evolved even since January. But it's really telling the story because pe what people love to hear is the way you've become free of the limitations of the dualistic system. And that's the key aspect. That's what everyone is actually looking for. And you can reconfigure that and apply it in different ways depending on the event you're involved in. And because you're a multidimensional being, there aren't any limitations. It isn't either or. You can deliver the event in September really effectively, and that's a lot of fun, and the pottery event. Or you can, do workshops for people, in Google. You can do the whole range, and it's having that sense that whatever is required, you're the girl to do it, and you have the capability, which you certainly do.
Oh,
Because with realization, you found the center of the wheel.
yes.
You and having done that, then everything's available.
Oh, that is such a beautiful way of articulating it, that with realization, we find the center of the wheel and then everything is available to us. It is our stability, it is our center, it is the ocean, it is our ocean. It is us as the ocean. Yeah, it's so exquisite. David, I had only one other question on my little list, which was just that it connects to intuition, which is just that
Yes.
the because I was confused about, I had always had this instinct as a young woman that there was some higher way of guiding my life, and I didn't know it. I didn't have access. Like, I wanted to have access to it. At that time, I thought it was learning how to talk with my guides, like spirit
Mm.
guides.
Yes.
And I wanted that so badly. And I really, really like went through trainings. I didn't think I was any good at it. I tried pendulums. I've tried the like feel your energy. I've tried all
Mm.
the stuff. And I always feel like I'm not, it doesn't really work. One of the things I kind of got depended on at a certain level, or it was both fun, but also like there's been times when I'm like, I think I'm a little too dependent on it, is like intuitives.
Mm.
I started with like an intuitive who would be a trance channel that I could talk with my
Yes.
guide when I was,
Yes.
22 or something.
Mm.
And I I have had since then periods in my life where I haven't had one. There's been different ones. One of the ones I've been working with for on and off for maybe 7 years or so. Really, she'll do like a blind read, and it's insane how correct it is in terms of things that are happening. So, kind of,
Yes.
I'm like, okay, I'm all ears. Like, what do you? This person obviously knows what's going on,
Mm.
and then, but there's also a sense that when I say there's, so a lot of what she works, so there's a handing over of my own authority in a way by being like, okay, this person knows what's up, I don't, but they do.
Mm.
And then there's also they will come up in the blind read with like other people's energy on me or something, and usually it kind of makes sense, like it's connected to an event where I'm like, oh yeah, I did just have that interaction with that family member, and it was a little weird, and now they're in my what chakra doing what to me, and it's messing up what, you know.
Yeah.
And then and then all the ways then she gives me all these energy exercises of things I'm supposed to do to clear these people and their energy out of my system, and I'm supposed to do it, so many times a day, and it is kind of grounding and calming when I do it. So there is kind of something there. I'm also like, I bless them, and there's sort of this whole thing. But I also at times find myself almost being afraid of the people, like interacting with those
Yeah.
people or something, because so there's some sort, almost like a virus, like it's going to get
Mm.
on me, or I like think about like, oh, I don't even want to know that my dad was thinking that, but she told me that, you know what I mean? So then it creates more
Yes.
mental turmoil.
Yes.
And so, and yet the flip side of that is, will this supplement work for me or not? It works for you. Will this one work for me? No. And I'm just like, okay, great. I don't have to go through the energy of figuring out what that is because I'm paying this person to figure it out for me.
Yes.
So I'm just curious if you have if what you might say to all that, David.
Well, actually, your experience is similar to the experience I've had, which is things like, using pendulums and, different kind of healing modalities. They never, well, they work to a degree, but never really, because the reason for that is that your true potential is in terms of your infinite potential rather than the limitation. So all of that really has been intuitive guidance, which has stopped you becoming caught up in those realms of limitation. Because there are lots of things in spirituality to do with protection and all of this kind of thing. The truth is, though, because and what you could say is that the things that those people are saying, they're true on the personal level, or they may have some validity on the personal level, but you can disregard that because when you realize you're the infinite impersonal being, there isn't nothing to protect. You don't need to, put a golden shell around yourself or anything to protect you because you're the infinite being. There is no protection required in that sense because nothing can touch you because all of that dualistic stuff only exists in the personal.
When I came into your community and you were talking about The Matrix, I was like, oh yeah, I've got to watch that. And it turns out it was my husband's one of his favorite movies. So we watched it
Oh,
together.
wow.
I rarely watch, I don't take in much either TV or movies. It's just not
No.
where my priorities are right now. But for most of my life, I mean, I think I was 12 when I told my mom I didn't want a TV in my room anymore and like, got the thing removed and then I just like kind of stopped that realm. And I know that when I did watch The Matrix with my husband, first of all, it was so weird. The movie became alive for us. So the part when this is just when the priestess oracle, the oracle is like
Yes.
Neo goes to visit the oracle and he goes in there and he says she says, well, first, I must tell you what this says above your head. Or I may not have it right. I've only seen it once, but I say out loud, like while she's saying it, like in sync, and my husband's right next to us, I'm like, know thyself. And like the trippy thing is, on our wedding ring, we actually have the Greek know thyself and then the Mona
Oh,
in the
fantastic.
middle. And that the
Fantastic.
intention was, I think, at least for me, he kind of goes along with my rides more, but it was like to our partnership be a
Mm.
knowing who we really are through like what you talked about, that unified
Yes.
field.
Yes.
And then, so back to the Matrix, though, then there's a point where they get into the deja vu space and they see the black cat, and our black cat runs in front of us. It wasn't there the whole movie. At the same time as the black cat runs in front
Really,
of
that's amazing.
it was just like we were both like it was getting so real. We were in our living room when we were like, what is
That was
happening?
like a glitch in the Matrix, wasn't it, when your cat ran across?
And the know thyself thing too, because like
Yeah,
I didn't not what why did I know she was gonna say this? It's not like they were in Greece or anything.
no.
Like why? I mean, I guess the name's Oracle. That's the only thing, maybe in my mind. But still, it was magical, and I'm going with that.
That's it.
Anyway.